have Professor Nadeem Nazar Ali, who's an associate professor at the University of Mauritius. We have Nwabisa Matoti, a research director at the South African International Maritime Institute. We have Nancy Kirigatu, a special envoy and advisor for the marine and blue economy. We have Oda Corneliusen, program manager at Circ Norge. And we have Mr. Peter Ockham, who is the senior advisor at Good Carbon. And for moderating this session, we have Dr. Rolf Rodwin, who is a member of the Arctic Working Group. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Throughout history, oceans have been crucial for mankind to develop and to thrive. It has fostered the emergence of great civilizations. However, also oceans are facing the challenges we see in the world today. In my part of the world, the Arctic part, climate change is already shaping our futures. The Arctic warms 3 times as fast as the rest of the world. And over the last 25 years, we have lost an amount of sea ice that equals the area of the whole continent of India. The frequency of extreme weather have increased dramatically, and the oceans acidified the Arctic oceans acidified 3 to 4 times as fast as oceans in the rest of the world. And this may have devastating effects on both fisheries and national incomes. Likewise, we have for a long time been using oceans both as our food market as well as our waste bin, both to an extent that is not sustainable. There are several examples of fish stocks being overharvested. And right now, UN is trying to facilitate an international agreement on regulating plastic litter, which often ends up in oceans and in seafood. Our relationship with oceans can no longer be purely extractive. From fishing to leisure travel to biodiversity, sustainability at sea must become priority. And global agreements and domestic norms must shift to make this a reality. So good afternoon, everyone. As said, my name is Rolf Rodwin. I'm the Executive Director of the Arctic Mountain Assessment Program, which is a working group to the Arctic Council. We are today going to discuss how oceans not only are the recipient of our challenges, but also part of the solution. Today we're going to explore how to ride the current of the oceans and create a circular blue economy. And who can be better doing so in this excellent panel we have here in front of us. So, I think I'm just going to start up by introducing the questions and to dive into really the million-dollar question to you, Nwabisa Matoti. So the first question I would like to bring up to the table today is, how can the common resources of the oceans be sustainable and used to promote human welfare? And what regulatory models find the right balance between sustainability and growth of the blue economy? I guess that's what everybody would like to know in the world today.
Yes, I think it is a million-dollar question, and with no single answer to it. Just to start off, I would like to emphasize that the marine resources are very crucial for human welfare, as they are sources of food, water supply, and the millions of people around the world are dependent on the ocean resources or marine resources for their livelihoods. And this also spreads to economic opportunities relating to job creation, trade, food security, and thus our contribution to economic growth. So it's important that we have effective management models for these resources that are in line also with SDG 14, which speaks to life below water and conservation and using resources in a sustainable manner, rather. So if I may highlight just a few models, I'll also just be focusing largely on the South African perspective, and my colleagues are welcome to chip in to add on, because as I indicated earlier on, this area is very broad. So some of the approaches include the development of blue economy strategies, we've seen various countries looking at strategies that had aimed at promoting the sustainability and growth of the blue economy. In the African context, we've got the Africa Blue Economy Strategy, which is linked to the AU Agenda 2063 and also the SDG 14. And in South Africa, we've got two main strategies, overarching strategies, that is Operation Phakisa Oceans Economy, as well as the Draft Oceans Economy Master Plan. Those two strategies are actually aimed at unlocking the potential of the oceans economy in South Africa by identifying a number of sectors within which interventions can be implemented to unlock this growth and increase the contribution of the oceans economy to the country's economic growth. And these are underpinned by a strong legislative framework. I'll just mention a few legislative models that we have in the country. For instance, the Integrated Coastal Management Act, which looks at the coastal management programs, as well as ensuring the protection of the coast and regulates activities that may harm the coastal environment. We've got NEMA, which is the National Environmental Management Act, which provides oversight over environmental governance, including principles of sustainable development and biodiversity protection. We've also got a Marine Living Resources Act, MLRA, which looks at the sustainable management of marine living resources in the country. We've got the Biodiversity Act, which is implemented through MPAs. We've got 22 MPAs in the country. I'm trying to speed up. We've got also the National Waste Management Act, promoting the principles of waste management. And South Africa is also a signatory to the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions that are aimed at combating hazardous chemicals to human health. And we're also a signatory to UNCLOS, which is United Convention of Law of Seas. We've also have a research chair as well at Nelson Mandela University to actually look at research in this regard and also build capacity for the law of seas. And lastly, the Marine Special Planning Act. These are some of the regulatory frameworks that we've implemented in the country to ensure that we ensure the sustainability and growth of the oceans economy or the blue economy. In addition to that, there are other models that you can possibly look at that are aimed at reducing marine pollution as it relates to climate change as well as marine resources. We've got MAPO that was launched by IMO. I'm sure we're all aware of that, which has seen initiatives in terms of decarbonization in shipping, linking to a use of alternative fuels by vessels. And also we've got there are other regulatory models that are looking at combating marine pollution in terms of plastics as well as oil spills. And South Africa has banned the single-use plastics, and at SAIMI, which is where I'm coming from, a South African International Maritime Institute based in Nelson Mandela University, we are doing some research aimed at looking at the impact of marine plastics on the marine ecosystems and working with universities like the Cape Peninsula University of Technology as well as the University of Cape Town. Western Cape, rather. Lastly, I know I was taking for so long. There are other models that can look at looking at sustainable fishing and aquaculture that looks at fishing practices that are sustainable, as well as providing access to small-scale fisheries. And lastly, I cannot underemphasize this point, the importance of research and capacity building relating to sustainability and growth of the blue economy, as well as community engagement and awareness. I will stop there. I think I've been talking for more than 5 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for a very thorough answer on that. And thank you for mentioning both we will come back to that a bit later also, but also like the the interplay between the international conventions as well as national implementation is also on a very local scale. I would like to, first, I'll come back to the business part soon, but I would like to also bring in Nadim Nasralli. You are, I would say, you're in the middle of it, being at the University of Mauritius, in the middle of the sea. I would just like to ask if you would like to add in something on this intervention.
Yes, good morning, everybody. So, like you mentioned about aquaculture, fisheries, which is very important also. First of all, my field is basically on sustainable marine aquaculture and ocean sciences and coral restoration, which I have been working quite a long time now in Mauritius. And the first thing when it comes to circular economy, for example, for Mauritius, a small island, we should think of the water quality. Because over time, with pollution, with unplanned waste management and everything that comes with these pollution had degraded the marine ecosystem. Well, when we say about, I would add on the sustainable aquaculture, is definitely what today we are talking on integrated marine trophic aquaculture system, where waste from one cycle goes to the second cycle and carry on until it is clear to go to the ocean. But as Mauritius, we are a very small island. I'll take an example of that. We have aquaculture system where we're producing 5,000 tons of aquaculture product, finfish. We do have barrachoirs where we produce crabs and oysters and all, but the main aspect is on the aquaculture of finfish, where 5,000 tons are being produced, and basically the waste is cycled and goes into the marine system. And there is a monitoring going on where we have assessment. We have PhD students at the University of Mauritius and working on integration of IoT, information technology, where we have live monitoring camera setup using AI technology, which is nowadays being more promulgated toward these ecosystem management and degradation levels and these aspects. And the second thing, we also have resources, for example, seaweed, where we don't valorize these resources. Well, these resources, where you have agricultural setup, they leach into the marine environment and cause pollution, and there is a blooming of those seaweed. And most of it goes to the landfills or taken up and goes into land, which upon valorization could be an interesting fact because research has been carried out. For example, using seaweed to produce CH4 gas or seaweed to compost also. But there's no large scale or anyone interested to continue with it. So through these, I would say collaboration is very important. Not be just in the countries with private sector and inland, but also between countries where they have already set up these and already carrying on. Because we know the marine environment, the sea, is impacting everybody. We can't say this is impacting only Mauritius. For example, South Africa, we have problem for South Africa, which is limited to South Africa. No, we have climate change, we have the glaciers, which is melting and is impacting us also. Being in the middle of the ocean, or Indian Ocean, we have sea level rise, we have problems of beach erosion. All these could be catered. A circular economy definitely is, circular blue economy definitely is something to think of and to expand upon it so that we don't end up destroying what we could have valorized. Like I mentioned, few of them, but there are more to talk upon these, and few research that I have published also, seaweed to CH4 gas, but we have limited times also. So this is few things that we can think of, definitely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Peter, I would like to, I mean, I just came from Baku and the climate COP, and I mean, we always see in the climate COP there's a lot of, back and forth between the nations, and one of the topics being up today, or this year, is the finance of it. Could you say a bit about how can business and finance be a part of the solution here?
Yeah. So, having spent my entire career in the private sector and most part of it in finance and in markets, so I think it's the key contributor to actually unlock the situation. I think it's very important to have regulation and oversight, but the regulation should enable the private sector to tackle the problem, and then supervision comes in to make sure that no one is taking any shortcuts, right? And I think India is here in this respect kind of world leading. I think I can give an example of a project in Gujarat, which is extremely well suited to be an example for other places around the world. But I think it was also very interesting what Sanjeev, the chief economic advisor, said yesterday, when he mentioned that they will now allow banks to take ships as collateral, because you need small little policy changes for allowing then finance to come in to do its part. So, I mean, we all buy houses, own property, without being able to have a property right to your own house and being able to give the bank a collateral, you wouldn't be able to buy a house because no one could buy it just cash, or only very few people could, right? And so I think that's what is needed to unlock it. And the example I wanted to give is the Great Green Wall of Gujarat, where the Indian government managed to create an incentive. So they are building and reforesting more than 1,000 kilometers of coastline in Gujarat with mangroves. And these mangroves, they will produce carbon certificates. They will also produce biodiversity certificates. Why is this important? Because, you know, corporates around the world who have committed to net zero targets, they need them. So they come in and bring financing, and therefore this does not kind of put a strain on the public purse. But at the same time, this project also has ancillary benefits because it does cyclone protection for the coastline, and it improves the quality of the fishes in the water, and therefore improves the livelihoods of the local community. So I think there are a lot of things that combine there, all by just agreeing that there is a value of biodiversity, there is a value of carbon certificates. So therefore people want to have it because there's a value, and then assigning property rights, making it investable. And then the private sector can come in and in a different quantity and find its way to for its personal solutions.
Thank you. It's really interesting to hear how you tell about how a cost actually can be a benefit or a profit for the businesses there, and I would like to pursue that. I mean, we also talk about waste as being waste, but also waste can be a resource. So Oda, you are the program manager at Circularity Norge, and this is what you work with. So to move on to next question, like if you could say something about how can recycling, in addition to conservation and circularity, work for businesses, and what is important for the preservation of the oceans?
Thank you very much for the question. It's a very broad question, but I think I would like to start with saying that in order to reduce marine plastic pollution and microplastics, which are very much important in order to ensure the sustainable management of the oceans, we need to start with the waste management. So in Circ Norge, we're the Norwegian Recycling and Circular Economy Organization. We work to ensure that that waste management on land is being prioritized, and we see that in our we have projects in India and Indonesia, and we see that the main reason for, or the main source of the problem for marine plastic pollution is the waste management. For example, we have a project in Banyuwangi in Indonesia where we see that 80% of the waste that is produced on land ends up in the environment because there is not an efficient system for waste collection, and the waste that ends up in the environment will ultimately end up in the ocean. So it's important to have cleanups and technology as well, but we have to tackle the problem from the source. And in order to make that work, we need to focus on bringing in a value for the waste, and specifically the plastics. We see that most of the plastic waste that ends up in the environment and the ocean is low value plastic. And I think in order to solve this problem, we need policy action. We need to set targets for the use of recycled materials in plastic products and packaging. And there also needs to be some kind of restrictions of what type of plastic projects can be put on the markets. We need to focus on design for recycling, because now these days in most countries, a lot of the products on the markets are not really designed to be able to recycled. And then we also need, in addition to bringing the value into waste, we need the governance aspects. So we need regulations that focuses on making it illegal to dump waste and also not process and collect 100% of the waste. And then we need regulations that can make the waste management systems financially profitable. That means to make both companies and also the individuals pay for the waste that they produce. And of course the fees must be very fair and reasonable, so everyone can afford to pay the fees. But we think that's very much important in order to create a sustainable waste management system. And then we also think international cooperation is very important, and we're very much looking forward to seeing the results of the waste management treaty. And in Cirk Norge, we hope for a very ambitious waste global plastic treaty that focuses on waste management and sets targets for recycled materials and also design for recycling. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Uda. Nancy, I had the pleasure of sharing the microphone with you, and I mean, you're the as the special envoy and advisor on blue economy to the executive office of the President of Kenya. Would you like to add in the African perspective on this? How?
Okay, thank you so much. And I want to acknowledge the comments that have come from my colleagues on the floor, and just to add to what has been said, because a lot has been covered, to say that now we know that the resources of the oceans are not unlimited. We need to do more. And some of the challenges that we are facing today, the air pollution, water pollution, greenhouse gas emissions, can all be attributed to a linear model that we've been using: resource extraction, production, distribution, consumption, and waste disposal. And this is no longer sustainable. And we need to think of how we can extend the usage and extend the life of the products we have as much as possible through recycling, through upcycling, in order to, as much as possible, lengthen their usage and as much as possible prevent them from getting into the landfills. So the maritime circular economy is a concept that can help us save the planet, increase biodiversity, and we have a few examples, some of which have been mentioned by my colleagues here. Seaweed is one such very good asset that we can use. In Kenya, we have an agricultural-based economy, or rather, agriculture is one of our key pillars, and therefore, having seaweed converted into fertilizer is one of the solutions that we have found. And in 2021, we have a company that came and set up Morganics Allied Limited, and just collecting the seaweed from the oceans and converting it into fertilizer that then goes into agriculture. That has turned out to be very, very useful. Mangrove forests, very, very important, especially for building resilience for coastal communities and also increasing biodiversity, because that's where the fish will grow. That's one of also the strategies that the Kenya government has embraced, replanting and growing and increasing the acreage of our mangrove forests is one of the strategies that we have embraced. Then the other one I'm going to mention is reusing plastics, particularly the single-use plastics. We've had a project which came out very well, the Flip Floppy project, if you could look it up, building a sailing dhow out of flip floppies collected from Lamu. It's one of our UNESCO heritage sites. Some of them, of course, from local usage, but some of them which had washed up on shore. And putting them up and bringing them together using technology, architectural expertise, and building a dhow that is used for tourism along the coastline is another reflection of what we can do to extend the life of those single-use plastics. One of the other issues that we've not explored as much is bringing synergy between the port communities, port cities, and the people living around there to see how much they can bring synergy into extension of life and working together with the port community to, as it were, use the resources they have. Investing in solar, water power, and projects from the from the people living around the areas of the port community. Some of them don't know, but raising awareness into some of the projects they could invest in and providing the investments into feeding into the green energy, contributing to the green energy, wind farms, particularly in Kenya and Africa, water, hydropower, to provide the energy that the ports need. That's one of the issues that has not been explored, but that could work very well. Extending the life or even sharing equipment in the ports that are used in the ports in terms of operations, so that not every port user comes in with their own equipment. That would be very nice. And then, of course, tapping into technology in order to bring efficiencies, Internet of Things and other such technologies in order to bring in efficiency and reduce the time that the ships will spend in port and such issues. So those are some of the strategies that I would want to.
Thank you. Peter, this sounds like business ideas, don't it?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's very important to bear in mind that that circular products also have additional benefits always, right? And so I spent the last 3 years working for a circular textile material business. And if you look at plastics, which is obviously at the heart of the circular economy as being the large issue where single-use plastic remains in the environment for 600 years, right? One has to also look at the history of how plastic and polyester came into our world, and that's kind of a military history during the Second World War, where there was a shortage of fibers, and so they were needed fibers for parachutes and uniforms. And then after the war was over, there was always supply capacity but no demand, so they made clothing of it. And today, if you look in the world, 75% of all fibers are synthetic fibers. So you can't also say like plastic is evil and we have to stop using it altogether, because you wouldn't be able to put clothing on 3/4 of the people on this planet. And I think therefore it's very important to get away from the make, use, dispose philosophy to one where you redesign your products from scratch with the principles of circularity in mind. And that's what we did in the startup, and the startup is now being supported also by the Swiss government through public procurement. And the idea is to modify basic products so that they can become biodegradable. And this material, for example, when microfibers are shed from it during washing, and 35% of all microplastic in the ocean comes from the textile industry. But microfibers from this material, they will biodegrade within 90 days, right? And the way that there was government support at the beginning of the conventional plastic industry, because it was, government procurement that needed uniforms and parachutes, I think we probably, when new solutions are available initially, once there is a pathway to competitiveness, I think it's important that governments endorse and they can kind of be the leaders in adaptation, right, of these circular products and materials. And I think in that regard, the European Union is very well positioned with its 2030 Green Deal proposition, where they will limit what can come into the European Union. So therefore, spurring a spur of innovation around the world to kind of find solutions in an industrial commercial way to address the new regulation that has come in place.
Thank you, thank you. It's really interesting. However, I would like to do a bit of a jump now to move from business to culture, and because all of us know that the ocean is not only about resources, but also about culture and traditions. And my question is, can our norms surrounding fishing be altered so that traditional and artisanal mechanisms which prioritize a symbiotic relationship between fishing communities and ocean resources are preserved? And I think I'll start with Nance. Or would you like to start? Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Thank you for that question. I like the fact that you've touched on the aspects of culture, which is very important because some coastal communities, or even communities in general, they use the ocean for their cultural initiatives. It is important to bring them on board as part of that. At SAIMI, we have a focus on maritime indigenous knowledge systems, where we try to engage communities about when we're getting involved in evidence-based research, we make sure that we involve them. That includes the consultation with the traditional leaders as well as the communities, to ensure that they are part of the decision-making processes that are based on that are linked to the ocean's economy. And linked to that is, you mentioned the issue of fishing. We need to embark on, and some countries have done that, to focus on small-scale fisheries. In South Africa, we have the small-scale fisheries policy, which has seen the issuing of licenses to small-scale fisheries cooperatives, and part of that has involved the capacity building to ensure that they understand the ocean's economy, and they're also safe when they go out at sea. So I think that I'll stop there and let other colleagues chip in that regard. Thanks.
Thank you. It's really interesting to hear about, both the co-production and co-decision and the whole process.
Yes, really co-creation, co-learning. Yes, those are the key principles that are underpinning the work that we do in maritime indigenous knowledge systems. Thanks.
Thank you. Nancy, could I hand over the microphone to you and let you add in here?
Thank you. I think I want to add that we concentrate so much on market-driven practices, particularly in fishing, and the industry of fisheries are the ones who get a lot of attention. Yet, having economic incentives for local communities in shipping, like my sister has said, would be very beneficial for sustainability. And also involving the local communities in decision making, because it affects them. And policy making, that would also be very, very good and sustainable. Or rather, improve biodiversity and sustainability in the fisheries industry. So I want to go back to South Africa and pick on the example of Abalobi, which is one of the best examples I've found on raising awareness among local fisheries communities and the benefits that are to be drawn in involving them and, into resiliency, into biodiversity contribution, having an app that is shared among the communities and collecting data, but most important, impacting on the market, because consumers play a big role in driving the markets. Fish with a Story marketplace, so important in bringing out and drawing out the contribution that local communities can make and creating happy communities out of that. So recognizing first the traditional methods and the contributions that they can make for biodiversity and also sustainability is very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like I mean, Mauritius, you have hundreds and hundreds of years of traditions when it comes to using the seas. So,
Yes, I would like to add on, is plastic the real problem, or where we throw it, where it becomes a problem? I'll take example now, the trend is biodegradable plastics. I've seen biodegradable plastics in the ocean. When I dived, I saw it entangled in coral reef. And you find them, and you know what happened next is you see fish eating those biodegradable plastic because they don't degrade in the marine environment. The thing is, where you throw it, eventually it will end up, for example, in Mauritius, it ends up in the ocean, and when the fish eats it, it don't add any nutritive value to their digestive system, to their body. Eventually, they are just eating it to get filled up, and eventually they will die out. So the problem about plastic should be case to case. I see it in Mauritius. For example, now people are moving using plastic cups, not plastic, but biodegradable material. For example, they are using barks or wooden stuff. But this will not be enough with the increasing population, with increasing tourism. For example, Mauritius, we used to have less than 1 million tourism coming to the island. Now we have around 1.2 million, and the government is pushing more and more. So the solution is not just about the biodegradable, but also about the recycling, the circular economy that should drive these, so that we don't end up finding a solution, but then a new problem crop up where how to manage those new solutions that we tend to create. Thank you.
thank you. I think new solutions is the key word here. One of the pleasures of gaining such an excellent panel here is also to allow the audience to ask questions. So I would like to open it for questions from the floor now, and I would like to encourage those that raise questions to be brief and ask questions rather than statements. So please go ahead. We have one down here, and I hope we can bring a microphone down to the gentleman. So.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, my honourable sister from another country, South Africa, and our mother from Kenya. You've highlighted quite a few things that actually, which we need to uplift within our communities in South Africa. And I've come from a community where we were shipbuilders and ship repair people. We also come from a community where we were fishing people. And at this stage of time, I'm so happy to see that they sooner or later is going to be including the local people around South Africa. And when I say the people that we come from, and they normally call us colored people of South Africa. And that is a derogatory terminology that we want to get rid of. And we would like to say that we come from the Khoisan clan, and the countries and the South African government need to recognize that we are the Khoisan people that help South Africa to be built, right, in the shipping industry and in the ship repair, and also in the fishery. And I'm glad that our mother has mentioned abalone, because in the Western Cape, the fishing people, the small indigenous people that own boats, they get restricted. They say, no, you cannot, what you call catch abalone. It must only go to the industrial people. But our local people have a quota system where they actually need, and that has to be recognized and be mentioned, that we need to give our local people around the industry more upper hand than the industrial giants. The same with the shipping also. We need to do that, and they need to give us recognition that we can help towards the economy, building ships, like in the port of Durban and in the port of Cape Town. I thank you.
Thank you. Any in the panel who would like to address that? Would you like to?
Thank you. Thank you very much for that comment. Indeed, that's what I had indicated, that considerations of the big boys, forgetting the local people, doesn't help us in building sustainability and biodiversity, because we are ignoring the hundreds of years of traditions and useful information that can help us in what we are trying to do. And I would agree with you that we need to do more on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Are there any other questions? There's one down there.
Hi, thank you. Very interesting discussions. My name is Paritosh Deshpande. I'm from NTNU in Norway. I also work with similar themes, circular economy and sustainable development. I have a question for all the panel. You were touching different approaches, and some of the keywords from your discussion is co-creation and community engagement and so on. So my question to you is, if you want to realize this co-creation to solve this plastic pandemic or whatever you might say it, which of the actors should take the lead? Is it the regulatory body? Is it the science? Is it the community people? Is it industry or innovations? Who do you think should be the starting point for this thing, this blue circular evolution that we are talking about?
That's a tough question. Who would like to? And I'm working with this on an everyday basis with the indigenous people of the north. So who would like to start? Peter.
Maybe I try, because I think innovation is always key, and I think that we will not change the inherent behavior of the people in this planet, kind of the incentive structures, and we can't not allow less well-off communities in the global south to not have the same standards of living as people in the north. So therefore, I think innovation is the only way out of this conundrum to make it a fair and equitable world where everyone can enjoy a reasonable lifestyle, right? But then I think it's also where governance support comes in. When innovation has been created, you need the support for fast implementation and adaptation. That can only happen if you have innovative governments which are, embracing change and innovation, and not those that are focused on the inherent risks only.
Thank you, Peter. I know Uda would like to say something and then back to you.
Thank you. I think this is a very important and difficult questions, and I agree that innovation is very, very important for this, but I also think, as you mentioned, that the regulations are important, especially from the circular economy waste management side. I think we need to strengthen the market and the demand for recycled materials, and to do this we need regulations. And as I briefly mentioned, we need to set targets for the use of recycled materials, and also targets to reduce the use of virgin plastics. So I think regulation must be at the core, but then we need all the other aspects as well.
Thank you, Uda. And Novisa,
just briefly, in terms of the limitations to implementation of initiatives within the blue economy or the oceans economy, one greatest challenge is that our initiatives are fragmented. So in the spirit of co-creation, it's important to bring all the relevant stakeholders on board, especially the communities, because the decisions that we make at the high level will have the impact on their welfare. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy?
Yeah. Just to add that, yes, regulations, we need everybody on board, but regulation brings clarity, confidence to market, especially to investors, and a level playing field which allows then the co-creation to thrive, because everybody is confident of what they're investing in and they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Nadeem, would you like to?
Yes, definitely in this one, I would say innovation is key. And also policies. And like I mentioned, plastic problem should be case-to-case basis, countries to countries. Otherwise, we end up using a resource natural. For example, like I mentioned earlier about the biodegradable, it could be sourced from the wood, but then you're limited in this, and you're going to destroy the biodiversity associated to it also. But yes, definitely it should be innovation and the regulation policies that should be amended and promulgated later on. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope there was a recording of that, because I'm going to bring all those answers back home to in my own work. There's a question in the front row here. I think I have time for at least one question. I'll maybe on the lady in the middle here first. She was.
Good morning, I'm Stefania Petruzzelli. I'm an independent researcher. So my question is for all the panelists, please. In your opinion, why COP29 has struggled to deliver concrete agreements for the blue economy? I mean, why is that? Because it's a huge problem and it's a huge thing, but there's no global policy in 2024. Thanks.
Thank you. And if the last question was tough, that was just a warm-up, eh? So, and I came directly there. So, and we have to. I would ask the panelists to give brief answers to that. And who would like to go first?
I a few words in this. I see blue economy basically it's a race to have it in terms of the economy activities and making more profit in terms of business than business, not in the sense that they should be collaborating for a better ocean, for a better development, like we mentioned earlier, I think from my colleagues also, and it is true. It cannot be just extractive and extractive. It should be something that the waste generated from one, for example, I take aquaculture, the waste generated from the finfish industry basically could be valorized, and of course, who will take up this? This could have this. It might be from other countries that have developed this industry, but sharing ideas, sharing the know-how is something very difficult and something not really coming from one industry to the other industry, and also in the government and government terms, country to country, that is not working. And this, if this works out, definitely the blue economy will scale up, and in terms of the circular blue economy, sustainable, and of course, betterment for the planet.
I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just because it's too abstract, right? I mean, we need common agreement on values, and then we need to measure these values. And once you can measure it, you can also incentivize action. And I think that's probably lacking. It's just such an abstract concept still.
Thank you. Oda, would you like to add in on the COP?
Sure. I think this is a very difficult question, but I think financing is always a big challenge, and the need to find mechanisms for low-income countries in terms of the financing. And then I also agree with Peter that this is a very abstract topic, and I think that's also part of the solution for why it's so challenging to have concrete action. Thank you.
Nancy, your thoughts on the COP?
She asked a difficult question. I think all of us approach the blue economy from different facets. Silo mentality, and we don't have an agreement because we look at it from different perspectives. Some from the profit, and I mean, that really, really drives. And when we look at the models we've been having about financing, they wouldn't apply here. And yet it affects all of us, return on investment, whatever. I mean, that doesn't work here. So we need to hone on, more on our common interests. I think universal interests, that's what's been lacking so far.
Thank you. Navisa, would you like to have the last? Already are. Okay. Okay, Navid, thank you. Thanks again for excellent answers to a really, really complex question. And as I said, I would say, just to add in, the COP is not done yet. So there's still some days and we've seen that the progress is done for last days. So I just want to add in that, but I totally agree with your question. Mm. Yeah, 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 yeah. Let's keep our fingers crossed, eh? Good. I think we have, because we're running out of time. If we can leave the question for afterwards, that would be nice. I promised the organizers to end on time, and sorry for that. So I just want to like sum up and conclude very, very short in 30 seconds. I mean, what I've taken home from this discussion is that we need to think broader. We need to address not only climate change, but also climate change together with contamination, with litter, microplastics, and biodiversity, and how to preserve all of those in a coherent way. We need to combine the international and national regulatory mechanisms together with local ones and traditional ones to ensure that we are also taking care of the culture of the sea when we regulate. And what I've also taken home from this discussion is that we have to bring together the public sector and the private sector. A lot of these solutions are when it comes to innovation. And so it's all coupled. And from my side, I would like to say that also the Arctic is coupled with the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. And just to do so, just in a gratitude to the guest, I'm going to give you all like this little pin that I'm also wearing. It shows the climate stripes. It's made by Ed Hawkins, and the sad story is that he has to remake those climate stripes because they're already out of scale. So that kind of points to the urgency of acting. So please join me in thanking this panel. Thank you.